Hello and welcome to the very first episode of the Sailing Uncovered podcast. My name is Alec Wilkinson and we'll be doing this every month. Our aim is to bring you the biggest names from the sport of sailing, to discuss the hot topics in the sport and also to give airtime to some of the amazing talent that will shape the future of sailing around the world. So, whether you're an armchair sports fan, a fanatical club sailor, or whether you just dream of one day crossing an ocean in a boat, then stay tuned and be inspired. And also get involved on Twitter and our webpage. More details of those coming up as well. There's a massive 12 months ahead for sailing, from the Olympics and the Vendée Globe to the America's Cup in a year's time and the Volvo Ocean Race as well. So this absolutely feels like the right time to launch our sailing podcast. And by the way, we're interested in regattas all over the world. We think we're across all the biggest events, but please do get in touch wherever you are and tell us about what's happening on your ocean or lake or river or reservoir or whatever body of water is next to you. On Twitter, we're called @SailingShow, or just search for Sailing Uncovered. So, what's on the first ever show?
It is a fantastic challenge and an adventure, really more than anything else. There's so many unknowns out there.
Mum definitely helped me along the way to get to the top.
I think I had time to make one cup of tea in the first 2 weeks of the race.
The thing about it is Richard's really into kite surfing. We were going from Necker Island to Anegada, which is about, 20 kilometres.
Before you make an important navigational decision in a solo race like that, it's really important to grab a bit of sleep, I think.
In a few minutes, one of the world's top foiling kiteboarders, and he's still only 18 years old, Olly Bridge, joins us to talk about his European title, the future of the sport, and about life on Richard Branson's glamorous private island. But first, Phil Sharp overcame some horrendous weather conditions and terrible breakages on board his Class 40 boat Emerus to grab a podium finish in last month's Bakerley Transat. It's the oldest solo transatlantic race and one of the most gruelling as well because it goes against the wind. This year it went from Plymouth to New York, and we caught up with Phil in Newport as he worked hard to get his boat fixed. Phil, hello.
Hello from Newport.
Hello. Now, you didn't have long in New York because you had to deliver the boat to Newport. You can tell us why in a moment. But have you recovered yet? That's the big question, mentally, if not physically.
No, not really. The recovery actually takes longer than you think. I think it takes several weeks, really, to cover from a race like this. I mean, we're averaging sort of 2 to 3 hours in the race probably per night, sometimes 4 if I'm lucky. So... there's quite a bit to catch up on. I keep still falling asleep in a restaurant at about 9 or 10 in the evening.
And you have been to quite a few restaurants from the photos I've seen online. I guess filling yourself up with steak and beer is the plus of arriving in New York.
Yeah, well, you can't really eat much else in America, really. There's just burgers on every menu, and you get a steak if you're lucky. And I've had a lot of pau chocolats, courtesy of Bakerley, the sponsor of the Transat as well.
Oh, that's good. That's good. A little bit of French and American cuisine. Anyway, you're in Newport. I guess, given the trouble you had on the crossing, that you're having the boat rebuilt.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we're in New England Boatworks, actually, just up the river from Newport. It's a pretty impressive place, actually. They've got a huge amount of resources for repairing boats, or even building new composite boats. I mean, they're really good on the composite side. So we're just getting the boat structurally checked over. There's quite a lot of work to do on like the rudders and some repair work inside. So yeah, it's quite important actually because the boat got a real hammering in the Transat, and there's quite a job list to get through.
Now, I know you didn't have an ideal run up to the race. You didn't have long with the boat at all. But when you did get going, it was performing well, and you were making great progress, and you were challenging in the Class 40. But you were beset by problems in the end.
Yes, I know. I think it was always going to be tough because our preparation was compromised. We were given the opportunity really to take part in this race very late in the day. So I stepped on the boat for the first time 3 weeks before the start, and only managed to do my my qualifying passage as really time on the water. So I only got out on the water really once before the start of the race, and it was really a case of getting to know the boat throughout the race, and unfortunately getting to know where the problems were as well, as is so often the case. And I know that I think the major thing really was the sails on the boat, because I didn't have time to get new sails before the start, so I had to really just run with a suit of second-hand sails that I got from various places. And I know I think that cost us. So it cost me the really the most time, I think, was the penalised through to damaged sails.
Yeah, and the penalty. Just talk us through that, because that was a 6-hour penalty, stop-go penalty.
Yeah, so the first evening of the race, I accidentally cut the corner of a traffic separation zone. And I'd actually missed the race briefing, so I wasn't aware that this was a restricted zone.
It should be said you missed it, not because you missed it, because you weren't paying attention. You missed it because you had to go to London, didn't you, to get your American visa?
Well, I wasn't actually present. Yeah, I couldn't be present for the race briefing. So I was told by the race officers that I needed to go to London, and that they would give me a separate briefing afterwards. And so I did that. And in that separate briefing, they didn't mention the restricted zone at all. They mentioned the Scilly Island zones. So yeah, I got handed a 6-hour penalty for that, which was, I think, really them just making a big statement. And I think it was like very harsh, considering that it was an unintentional error. But yeah, I had to deal with it, and actually I did quite a lot of work on the boat during the 6-hour penalty. It was like a stop and go penalty right in the middle of the Atlantic. So I literally had to take all the sails down, stop the boat, and I could only restart 6 hours later this same line in longitude. But I actually found I had some issues with the rudders and repaired those. I had to make a repair on the spinnaker pole, and these were things I couldn't actually do underway. So it had its benefits, and it was all very fun actually. Then trying to get back up to the front and get back into the lead, and the weather was. The weather was very, very variable, so there was a lot of opportunities to take then.
Listening to you talk about what you did during that stop-go penalty, you didn't just stay positive, but you're pretty resourceful. And I think that sort of description is perfect for your whole race, because all the way along you were beset by problems and you overcame them. And one of the major problems was a ripped mainsail. It did offer us probably the most iconic photo of the race when you sail past the Statue of Liberty, and that is on the internet if people want to go and have a look at that photo. It's a great photo. But tell us about the rip sail and how you got around that.
Yeah, well, I think firstly, when you've got issues like this and with a penalty, you've just got to look forward, really. And the race takes a different turn. You've got to then maybe change your objective slightly. And it was a huge shame really that the mainsail disintegrated. And it was actually when I was trying to take the third reef, and I'd just dropped the sail. It was flapping at the leech for 5-10 minutes, and the leech just started disintegrating. And then the main actually started ripping all the way across the sail, just below the fourth reef and above the third. So I had to take the mainsail down. I tried to repair it, but I didn't have enough decent repair material on board to really make the most of this massive damage. Put the mainsail up, and yeah, the whole thing just ends up ripping across. So it was difficult because I had to think of a way of going upwind, and without a mainsail, it was impossible. I tried going upwind, and all I could make was either north or south. Unfortunately, New York lay directly west of me, so I couldn't make any VMG whatsoever, and I could only make about 4 knots in the water. So after an hour's sleep and recovery, I woke up actually with an idea in my head, more positively, and tied the leech of the 2 sections of the sail together, hoisted it, and I could get enough leech tension for the sail to be remotely useful, even though it looked absolutely hideous. Actually, having that sail up the mast damaged like that was much better than not having a main, and allowed me to start going upwind vaguely towards the finish, which was a great moment.
Now, most people would look at that damage, hear what happened, see what happened, and would start pulling their hair out and think, "Oh, what am I going to do?" You went to bed.
Yeah, that's right. I was so exhausted because I tried repairing the sail, it didn't work, and I couldn't really think anymore. And I've learned from solo sailing, actually, when you get to that sort of state and you can't mentally apply yourself, it's much better to just go to sleep for half an hour, wake up, and you're in a much more positive frame of mind usually, and you can think rationally as well. So before you make an important navigational decision in a solo race like that, it's really important to grab a bit of sleep, I think. It helps a great deal. And particularly when you're beset with problems like this, sometimes you have to sort them out before and you're exhausted, in which case it's always good to try and get some sleep in the bag. As you know, without sleep, you're not capable of doing anything rationally. It's unbelievable, but that is the case in this sort of game.
Do you ever have time to actually think once the race starts, or are you constantly just mentally, as well as physically, obviously, but mentally busy as well, constantly thinking, checking, altering this, changing that, or is there time to for a little contemplation?
In this race, there was just no time. I mean, I didn't even have. I think I had time to make 1 cup of tea in the first 2 weeks of the race, and I had hundreds of tea bags.
Well, that's desperate for me.
Expecting. Yeah, no, it was, and I normally need several cups of tea a day, but you have you end up with so much to do. You've got all your sail changes. You've got to keep the boat going at maximum speed the whole time. You've then got to download weather forecasts and decide what the best course of action is to take with your strategy and your routing, and then you've got to find time to eat and sleep. And often, when you've taken care of the performance side of the boat, and that you're happy that the boat's going the right direction, you've got the right strategy, there's often very, very little time to do that. And you're sometimes so exhausted and you're so hungry, you just got to make the decision between, right, do I eat or do I sleep? And often I hadn't eaten all day, but I just had to go to sleep first before I could do anything because I was so shattered.
Are the French so successful at offshore racing because they don't need so much tea as the Brits? But in all seriousness, the Transat is, or this particular edition was very much a French race. There were only 2 Brits in it, and huge names were taking part, from the winner Francois Gabard to legendary Loic Peyron. Why do you think they really go in for this form of sailing over others?
Well, it's incredible because a lot of the races that they now seem to dominate were started by the Brits, mainly because it was a crazy idea. And maybe we had the inspiration and the endeavour in the first place to go out there and do it. And they've made the whole sport really commercially successful. So offshore sailing is massive in France. And these big names like Loic Peyron are household names. And sailing is the 3rd biggest sponsored sport in France. So it's amazing how successful it is. And I think one name really makes the Transat so interesting from a French perspective, and that's Eric Tabarly. He's like a god in France. If you mention him, then a Frenchman will kneel down in front of you.
And of course, Peyron was racing his original boat.
Yeah, no, that's right. Yeah, and it was it was a pretty interesting story and idea, and it's a real shame he didn't make it across. I guess at the same time he didn't want to completely destroy his old boat, so there was a case of preservation, and he took the safest and I'm sure the right course of action to retire, given the weather being very, very demanding. But yeah, no, these guys keep coming back for more, and the Transat is a really, really big part of French sailing now, and a lot of people want to go out there and win it. It was a real shame there weren't more Brits taking part. I was the only Brit to actually get to the finish, I hope that I can inspire more people to get to the start of this incredible race, because it is a fantastic challenge and an adventure, really, more than anything else. There's so many unknowns out there, and there's so many twists with the weather that time of the year. It's very tough, but it's incredibly challenging, and it's a great I think a story to tell people after the race.
So for those who don't know, Eric Tabarly won the race in 1964, and the boat that he won the race in, Loic Peyron, tried to do this Transat but retired because of various issues with the boat. But the interesting thing is that Tabarly won it in 64 in 27 days and 3 hours, and you came in 19 days and 31 minutes. So obviously a significant difference. And is it just about the design of the boat, or are modern day sailors, do they know more? Do they have different ways of sailing, better tactics, or is it just a technical thing?
Well, I think that one big thing is that we've got access to weather data, so we can really route ourselves according to the forecast, and that can make a massive difference, because you can actually, right in the middle of say a depression as it goes through you, which is like the fastest way to go through a system at times, and it means you can actually have a lot more downwinds or a lot more reaching, and try and avoid the upwinds, and the upwind is very slow indeed. Unfortunately, in my race, there was no way whatsoever of avoiding it towards the end of the race. There were literally just westerlies everywhere the last week of the race, and the whole Class 40 fleet had to go through them, and that's really what broke so many boats and skippers in a way, and provided the real testing conditions for me, and that's what ripped the mainsail. And it's unfortunately a feature you get with this race, is that there will be a lot of roadblocks, a lot of storms and gales in your way. And you're going to get hit, and that's something that we had to deal with every few days, was getting hit by quite a large depression.
So you came through the Transat, a fantastic achievement. What next? Because I know you've got some very precise plans for the near future and further ahead than that.
Yeah, so this year we're focusing on the Class 40 Championship, and there's three main events on that we're taking part in, and Imerys are taking part in. And the first one on that is the Transat, which we've accomplished. We're then going to go up to Quebec for the start of the Quebec St Malo, which is a return transatlantic. And then there's another race back in France called the Normandy Channel race, and that's a really strategic, really nice race. It's double-handed, and that will really round off the season for this year.
So a really busy time ahead, Phil. We wish you the very best of luck, and thanks for the insight and for joining us. And you can keep up to date with Phil's progress via our Twitter account, Sailing Uncovered, or @SailingShow. Now, in just a moment, we hear about sailing's most revolutionary class, the foiling kiteboard, and one of its top athletes, Olly Bridge. So don't go away. Welcome back. I'm Alec Wilkinson, and this is Sailing Uncovered. Now, I started the podcast by saying that one of our aims is to shine a light on the future of the sport. So in that spirit, let's talk to a young guy who grabbed silver at the inaugural European Championships of foiling kiteboards. 18-year-old Olly Bridge.
Hi, how's it going?
All good. So, European silver medalist, which also meant you took the under-21 title.
Yeah.
But how long have you actually been on a foiling board?
So I've been foiling since 2012, so quite a few years now.
And how has the technology developed? I mean, how different is it now from when it was in 2012?
Yeah, it's definitely come a long way. Not only the foils, but also in the kites, and everything's just come together, and it's working really, really well at the moment.
Now, you said it's 4 years. Do you think, why has it taken so long to get a European Championship?
Really only because everybody used to be on the formula boards, and foiling sort of just get bigger and bigger over the years. And now the formula boards sort of run out of competitors, so they had to switch it to foils just to bring the numbers back up.
Okay. And so how was it as far as, organisations concerned? And because it was in Cagliari, it was off Poeta Beach in Sardinia, which is an amazing venue. Did it perform for you?
Yeah, it was it was a really good regatta, actually. One of the best ones I've ever been to. We had 6 days of racing every day in all conditions. We had the strong Tramontana in the first 2 days, offshore gusty, shifty, and then the end of the week we had some nice light thermal sort of winds. And yeah, the race organisation and everything was perfect. We got a lot of racing in.
Yeah, it's quite intense, isn't it? The format, because it's over 6 days. You go through the qualifying, then you've got a whole load of finals races before a whole day of medal races. So physically, it must be pretty difficult.
Yeah, definitely, because normally the events are normally 5 days, but this was even longer. So there was a lot of racing every day, and it was got quite tiring at the end. But
so do you know why that was? Is that a foiling thing?
No, there was meant to be a speed event at the beginning, the first 2 days, but that got cancelled, so we ended up being there for 2 days extra.
And I suppose the great thing about it was it really was an international event. It wasn't like, a sort of a World Series where you've only got two nations taking part. There were guys and girls from all over the world.
Yeah, it was a lot. It was great, actually, because it was the first European Championships for the foils, but we still got all the normal people that we've had over the past 3 years. So I don't know how many countries we had representing there, but yeah, there was a lot of people.
When you say normal people, just expand on that, because you're talking about normal kiteboarding.
Yeah. So like the normal people, the normal competitors that we've had in the class for the last 5-6 years, all of those people have switched now across to the foils from the race boards, and they're still going at it hard.
So where are we now with kiteboarding and foiling kiteboards? Is it all going to be foiling, or is it going to split very much into two sort of sports?
Yeah, so now pretty much everything's switched across to the foils, for the racing especially, just 100% on the foils now. I think that's what they want to propose for the Olympics, so it's going to keep that way.
Well, the IOC do keep banging on about new sports bringing in younger people, and certainly foiling kiteboards. Well, they tick all the boxes, don't they, from that point of view?
Yeah, definitely. We're probably one of the fastest people out there on those 15-minute courses, where it's really about the manoeuvres and jibes and the tacks and the starts. It's pretty amazing the speeds we get up to, and in the straight lines too. It's great to watch for people.
And so, for those who haven't seen a foiling kiteboard, and if you haven't, you should just Google Olly Bridge's name, and there are plenty of videos of him in action. But just describe what it's like and how it looks.
It's just amazing. It's like riding on just butterflat water. There's no sounds, no chop. You hit nothing. It's perfect, just silent, just a small whistle off the foil.
and it is literally just a board. And when you're up and foiling, it's just this little fin sticking out the bottom and floating across or flying across the top of the water, isn't it?
Yeah, the board's not really so important. That's why I think there's so many people coming into it, as they've been able to change their regular kite surfboards and mount a foil to the bottom of it. Yeah.
So is it physically as demanding as kiteboarding? More demanding? What's it like? Because we hear a lot about America's Cup boats now needing a very difficult sort of athlete on board. What about boards?
I always thought that the race board was a lot more physical, just because you had to work it through the chop and through all the different types of conditions. Whereas this, it's more you're just pushing as hard as you can. And I thought at the start it wasn't so physical, but yeah, it is actually physical, really physical.
So what sort of training do you have to do?
For me, it's more, I really like just kiting, that sort of training. Just many hours on the water, on the board as possible.
Yeah. And what about the gym and going running or cycling or any other sports? Because now you're no longer at school, so you're pretty much full time in on your kiteboard. Do you do anything other than being out on the water?
Yeah, I do a bit in the gym sometimes when there's no wind, and on the bike. But yeah, as soon as the wind's up, that's sort of my preferred sort of training, definitely.
So the big question is, and we've touched on this, talking about the Olympics. The big question is, is it the future? I think that the question is now redundant, isn't it? Because you pretty much answered the fact that foiling kiteboards are here to stay. But I suppose the question now is, how far can they go? How fast can you go?
Yeah, there's 100% here to stay. I think it's going to be more and more popular throughout the whole sailing classes in the future of the foils. But as far as they can go, I think there's a lot that we can work on, as these foils have only been out for a few years. Whereas I look at where we had race fins, like the development in those fins over 5 years was pretty. There was a lot in it. I think it's going to go the same way as foiling. There's going to be a lot to be gained in the design.
Someone who's listening to this, who'd love to get into it, who hasn't done any kiteboarding, where do you start with it?
So if they haven't done any kiteboarding before, firstly, they've got to learn to kite surf and be a confident kite surfer. And then after that, it's going to take them about 10 hours, maybe to start with. They need a couple of lessons, but after that, they can work on their own. Once you can kite surf, learning to go on a hydrofoil is it takes the same amount of time as learning to kite surf.
And it's all about speed, and that raises you up, and then it's all about keeping the balance. It's quite complicated, really, on a sailing boat, but you make it sound almost straightforward on a kiteboard, but I can't believe it is.
Yeah, it's all about the balance between the front and the back foot, and then the speed when you get them up on the foils. Whereas on the Moth, of course, you've got the wand at the front which controls the angle and stuff, so you don't have to do so much weight shifting in the boat. But on the foils, the hydro kite foils, we don't have any of that stuff. So it's all to do with the movement of the pressure in your front and back foot. So if you want the foil to come up, you're putting the pressure on your back foot, and then to go down on the front foot. So it's all about getting that balance right.
Cool. And of course, you've got the support of your whole family, and a fairly big family it is, because you've got two brothers, so there's three of you. You all kiteboard, and of course, your mum is a multi-world champion at kiteboarding, and she was at the Europeans. How is she finding this new technology?
Yeah, she's slowly coming across. She hasn't had too much practice this winter, but yeah, she really, it's just enjoyable. It's so much more enjoyable than the race board. That's why she loves it too. And yeah, she's practicing and getting better.
Are we going to see you and your mum, Steph Bridge, competing again fairly soon?
Yeah, soon. Around the middle of July, there's another European tour stop for the foil tour stop called the IKA Kite Foil Gold Cup, which is around the whole of the world. And there's one of those events in Italy, and that's the next one we're going to be at.
I always wonder with Yeah, the children of athletes, how much of your success can you sort of base on your mum and the fact that maybe she and your dad who coaches you, your dad Eric, how much of their coaching from an early age do you think has helped?
Yeah, for me, it's definitely probably the main factor as my parents were got me into it at the start in 2005, and as soon as it went possibility of the Olympics, the racing, mum definitely helped me along the way to get to the top.
Now, I know I've interviewed your mum and your younger brother Tom a few months ago, and he was talking about having to juggle school and training and so on, and the difficulties of that, although he seems to kind of quite enjoy it. And I suppose starting young is the trick, because you don't actually feel you're making those sacrifices because you're just out having fun.
That's really what it's all about. It's not really, it's more of a hobby, not a job, I guess. And then it's just, that's the way I like to think of it, because it's the funnest.
You all live down in Exmouth in Devon in the southwest of England. So you've given up school. Are you doing any work at the moment? Because I've heard about a boat building project you're working on.
I just basically go to the events, and then when it's good wind, go riding, or there's no wind, sometimes in the gym or on the bike. But then other than that, sometimes I help my granddad out because he's building a boat, but he needs a bit of help, obviously. So I do that in some mornings, and that's pretty good.
There's a video on your family website, about you guys, and your granddad's featured in that, and he's been boat building all his life, hasn't he?
Yeah, he has indeed.
In Exmouth? Yeah,
in Exmouth, Ian's boat building shop. He used to make a lot of Merlin rockets down here, and he's sort of it's not really continuing anymore. So this boat that we're building at the moment is going to be the first boat that's built in this workshop for the past 10 years. I think that's what's really exciting.
Tell me a bit more about the boat.
Yeah, it's like a Caribbean fishing boat. It's basically like a wooden Caribbean fishing boat with like a long bow, 24
Fantastic.
foot, and a lot of room inside, and no tubes. So it's sort of, my granddad explains it as it's a rib without tubes, pretty much. Yeah.
Fantastic. And where are you actually going to sail it, or are you going to sell it?
No, he's going to use it for himself here in Exmouth. Yeah.
Well, he'll certainly be spotted from the beach going out in that. It sounds fantastic. You've got lots of titles to your name already. Are the Olympics your ultimate goal, or are there other goals within the discipline, within the sport and the class that you're aiming for? Possibly might mean more to you.
I think the Olympics is probably more of the biggest goal for the long term. But yeah, short term, I've got a lot more other goals. So, like for example, in a couple of weeks, we're trying to do around the Isle of Wight record attempt. So that's something that I'm really,
because you tried that last year. It didn't come off because the conditions weren't right. Tell us a little bit more about your plans for this year.
We're going to have a couple more boats so we can go at our own speeds. It's going to be me, my brother, and my brother Guy, and my mum, and we're going to be going for it. And yeah, just on the foils, got some new foils, some new equipment. I didn't actually do it last year, so this is going to be the first time for me. But it's mainly about the wind, really, the direction of the wind, either true north or true south, really. Nice 15 knots, and can reach around pretty well.
And just to get this straight, the target is to go around the Isle of Wight fastest ever. And I think the record's held by Sir Ben Ainsley.
Yeah, I think it's like 2 hours something. I'm not sure, but yeah, he's got the record.
Well, you'll need to check that before you set off.
Yeah.
Well, one big achievement that you've already done, which very few people get to do, and that is being invited for a little holiday to Necker Island with Sir Richard Branson. That must have been amazing. How did it come about?
There's one of Richard Branson's friends who lives in Devon, and when Richard was doing the Channel crossing for his birthday, he was invited. So this guy that lives in Devon invited us out to the island to help him and help his kids learn how to kite surf. that's how it really came about.
And there's a great photo of you at the table with Richard Branson having a laugh, and we'll have to see if we can tweet that at some point and see what people's reactions are.
Yeah, that just the thing about it is Richard's really into kite surfing, and that's mainly like his main passion, I guess, out there. It's perfect for it too. The conditions are pretty all time, so he's just kite surfing around, and he's also one of the ones that's trying to get kite surfing into the Olympics too. And yeah, it's really helping.
And so presumably you passed on some tips to him, and did you get to kite surf with him?
Yeah, we had a couple of trips. We were going from Necker Island to Anegada, which is about 20 kilometres on a reach. So he came and we did that together. And it's pretty cool.
Well, just before you go, we always ask our guests for just a trivia question, which people can then, our listeners can then get involved in answering, maybe on Twitter, and I'll give you the details of how to do that in a moment. But have you got one for us?
So I've done quite a lot of kite surfing all around the UK. Where do you reckon's my favourite place?
Where is Olly Bridge's favourite kite surfing place? Any clues?
There's a lot of tide, and there's an estuary, and it's pretty good in all wind directions.
There we go. It's just a bit of fun. Where's Olly Bridge's favourite place to kiteboard? And we've posted the question on Twitter. You can send us your answer by reply. And by the way, whilst you're there, do please give us a follow, because we'll be doing more and more on Twitter as the podcast develops. Right, so what's next for you, Olly, this summer?
I'm going to go and test some new foils over at Levitas Kite Foils. Yeah, some of the best equipment on the market, I'd say. Yeah, it's going to be good being able to double it up, doing the kites and the foils at the same time. So, going to get a lot done, I think. Good
stuff. Thanks very much for joining us, Olly. It's been fascinating speaking to you. Best of luck, and hopefully we'll speak again soon, maybe with a roundup of the season.
Yeah, thank you.
And that's it for our very first podcast. Time has flown by. Thanks to our guests, Olly Bridge and Phil Sharp. Next month, with just a few days to go to Rio 2016, we'll bring you our guide to Olympic sailing, with the sailors to look out for and which class of boat will give us the best in and the closest competition. Meantime, stay in touch on Twitter. Search for Sailing Uncovered. It's been great to have you along. Hope you enjoyed it. Let us know what you think. Very important to us to know what you think. What you'd like us to talk about, and of course who you'd like us to interview in the future. And we'll be back at the end of July. So from me, Alec Wilkinson, happy sailing.